Fourth quarter, I made 2 straight shots, and they called timeout. And in the timeout, he took me out the game. I was pissed.
I understand what he's saying, but, you know, from an outside looking in, there's a comparison that is natural. And you have to, there is a debate. And it's for us to say it, maybe not for him.
Not getting as many open shots in transition.
An open jumper.
He was the greatest player. No.
Michael Jordan will be my goal. It would be my goal. But that doesn't mean I'm not taking anything away from LeBron. LeBron is amazing, but Michael Jordan is my goal.
There's a chapter in basketball history that fans still debate to this day, and it all centers around a fascinating showdown where Larry Bird and Michael Jordan shared the same court, but the balance of power felt anything but equal. It wasn't loud or flashy dominance either. It was the kind of control that slips past you in the moment and only becomes obvious when you go back and watch the footage years later. So what was Bird seeing that everyone else missed? And more importantly, why did Jordan, a player known for taking over games, seem to adapt to Bird's presence rather than completely impose his own will?
Building was in a frenzy, as we should be. But please put the camera on Larry Bird. Larry looked up at that clock. He's like, stoic demeanor, because he knew what we all knew, that they had Michael Jordan, and there was still time on the clock.
We knew where the ball was going to go. Everyone in the building knew.
Incredible playoff performance. I've never seen it before, and I had never seen it after. That wasn't Michael Jordan out there. That was God disguised.
Putting up by hitting his first. Here's Bird.
Then you had all your media naysayers. Oh, scoring champion can't win an NBA title, or you know you're not as good as Magic Johnson, you're not as good as Larry Bird. You're good, but you're not as good as those guys. You know, I had to listen to all this, and that put so much wood on that fire that it kept me each and.
This wasn't the type of game fans simply watched and forgot, and that alone tells you something much bigger was taking shape long before the clock hit zero. The battle between Larry Bird and Michael Jordan was never viewed as just another memorable matchup. But when you revisit every detail years later, it begins to look less like a basketball game and more like a silent battle for supremacy between two players fighting for ownership of the sport at its absolute peak.
A lot of fun on the job because it was Larry Bird and Michael Jordan, and we would do a shot, and then we would cut, and they'd have to change the camera. We'd go play 2 holes of golf, and then come back. But that's kind of I'm still a little not bitter. We won the game, and I guess it's about that. But I made the steal at the end of that game, and I passed it to Mike, and then I was wide open. And
the story is often told with Michael Jordan cast as the unstoppable rising star, a scorer so explosive that defenses looked more like minor speed bumps than actual threats. Yet waiting on the other side was Larry Bird, a player whose reputation for outthinking opponents was so powerful that even elite defenders knew they were in for a long night before the ball was ever tipped.
Jumped on the bus. Like, I was pissed. And I felt like I was going to sit in the back and not talk to the coaching staff. And so I walked up. I'm like, damn, Larry already on here. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I'm gonna just walk, like a kid mad at their parents. Like, I'm gonna just walk past him and not say nothing. And he's like, Jalen. Turned around, like, all right, coach. He had a beer in his hand. He's like,
Bird wasn't simply collecting wins during that period. He was redefining the way basketball was understood at the highest level. In many ways, it felt like he had already mastered the language of the game and was creating the blueprint for greatness while everyone else was still trying to figure out the basics.
Parrish, McHale, and Walton, all of them about 7 foot tall that could score, run, defend. We had Danny Ainge and Dennis Johnson, our guards, and I was a small forward. So we had a big team, and we were deep, we were big, and of all the teams I've been on, there's no question that was the best team. Our whole thing was just do what we can do to hold Michael down. But you don't hold the great ones down.
At his best, LeBron James at his best.
Oh my
God. And do we have to put the teams too, or just individual players?
If there's a draft,
Oh my God.
you can take Bird or LeBron. So let's say I take Larry at this age when I think he averaged 30, 10, and 7, something like that.
By the middle of the 1980s, Larry Bird had firmly established himself as the king of the basketball world, and his grip on that position seemed almost impossible to shake. He had accumulated MVP trophies, championship glory, and a level of excellence so consistent that people began treating greatness as just another day at the office for him. The Celtics weren't simply winning games, they were dictating entire seasons with a calm authority that made rival teams feel like they were always one step behind the story. But while Boston sat comfortably at the top, a new force was quietly beginning to emerge, and he happened to wear number 23. Michael Jordan arrived in the NBA not as a finished product, but as a phenomenon that suddenly became impossible to ignore. From day one, he carried himself with a confidence and aggression that seemed far beyond what anyone expected from a young player. He attacked defenses with a level of imagination that almost looked reckless, as though nobody had ever told him which shots were considered bad decisions. And that's exactly why the Celtics started paying attention long before the rest of the league fully understood what was coming. Because among all the talented players in the NBA, Jordan already carried himself like someone destined to redefine the standard. When these two basketball worlds finally met on the same stage, the matchup felt anything but even. Boston remained the proven powerhouse, a machine built on discipline, precision, and elite understanding of how every inch of the court should be used. Jordan, meanwhile, represented controlled chaos mixed with breathtaking skill. Every time he attacked the basket, it felt less like a scoring attempt and more like a direct challenge to the entire defensive system standing in his way.
Underneath the basket as the ball is coming. And I'm looking, I'm like, this is going in. I mean, millimeters in and out. And we made him double clutch on that shot, and he still almost made it.
Yeah, y'all being disrespectful. I said, what are we doing? He says, y'all got a white guy trying to guard me. I remember one time we were playing the Celtics, talking to Larry, who was amazing. So it's my team at this point. The Doc and Moses are gone, and Larry says, Chuck, can I talk to you a second? I said, sure, what's up, LB? He says, yo, man, y'all being disrespectful to me. I said, Larry, I would never let one of my players be disrespectful. He's like, yeah, y'all being disrespectful. I said, what are we doing? He says, y'all got a white guy trying to guard me.
And yet, no matter how explosive Jordan looked, Larry Bird never carried himself like a player under pressure. Instead, he approached Jordan the way a master strategist approaches a talented newcomer, studying every move, making subtle adjustments, and patiently waiting for the perfect opportunity to seize control. What separated Bird from everyone else during that era wasn't simply his ability to score or create plays, but his rare talent for dictating the pace of an entire game without demanding attention. He could alter floor spacing with the smallest movement, bait defenders into mistakes without even having the ball in his hands, and then make them pay with incredible precision. It was a level of control that rarely made the highlight shows, but it was the type of basketball intelligence that kept opposing coaches awake at night. At the same time, Jordan was starting to learn a difficult lesson about facing the Celtics. Every attack toward the basket seemed to trigger an immediate response, almost as if Boston's defense had been specifically designed with him in mind. It wasn't about a single defender stopping him. It was wave after wave of help defense, perfect rotations, and elite anticipation that forced him to earn every inch of space. And somehow, while all of that attention was focused elsewhere, Bird kept appearing in the most unexpected spots, making winning plays and putting points on the board when nobody saw them coming.
At the same time, as a basketball player, I'm trying to become the best that I can, you know, and for someone like me who achieved a lot in over the time of my career, you look for any kind of messages that people may say or do to get you motivated to play the game of basketball at the highest level. because that is when I feel like I excel at my best.
Michael Jordan didn't beat Larry Bird. You showed Michael Jordan going between his legs one time in the highlights against Larry Bird, and that was the game he got 63.
That's when he dropped 63 on Bird. Yes.
But if memory serves me correct, they got swept. No, not lost. They got swept.
LeBron has gotten swept before.
So Michael Jordan in the 80s, he never won. He never beat Larry Bird. He never beat Magic.
Jordan would attack the paint with his trademark explosiveness, only to be met by a wall of defenders closing in from every direction. Meanwhile, on the opposite end of the floor, Bird seemed to effortlessly slip into the perfect spot, as if he already knew exactly how the possession would unfold before anyone else did. This wasn't the kind of dominance that demanded attention with flashy plays. It was quiet, methodical, and almost impossible to stop. The type of control that gradually reshaped an opponent's decision-making instead of simply forcing immediate reactions. As the contest grew more intense, an unusual pattern began to emerge. The Bulls weren't falling apart, and Jordan certainly wasn't backing down, yet the Celtics never appeared uncomfortable. Bird especially looked like he was operating on an entirely different level, not quicker than everyone else, but noticeably calmer, almost as though every possession was moving in slow motion inside his mind, while the rest of the players struggled to keep up. That subtle advantage and awareness created opportunities that even the most disciplined defensive schemes couldn't completely eliminate. At a certain point, Jordan started searching for answers, not by becoming more cautious, but by doubling down on his aggressive style. What initially looked like a showdown between two superstars slowly transformed into a lesson on how one player could elevate an entire team while still remaining individually dominant. The Celtics' offense began revolving around Bird in a way that made every trip down the court feel deliberate and calculated. If defenders crowded him, he found ways to score. If they stayed attached to their assignments, he created easy opportunities for teammates. And when switches created favorable matchups, he attacked them with a patience and confidence that almost felt disrespectful to the defense.
Us to tell you who the GOAT is, the people who've admired or both players or multiple players, to tell you it is by the criteria that we set. And the one thing that I would say that creates him and makes him the basketball GOAT of everything that we've seen in our day, in our lifetime, is that everything that we talk about and we see on this part, on the offensive end, he was just as good on the defensive end.
Meanwhile, Jordan kept putting up impressive numbers, but by this stage, it was becoming obvious that every point came through relentless effort, while Bird seemed to influence the game almost effortlessly. By halftime of one of their most talked about battles, the score remained tight, yet the overall feel of the game told a very different story. Jordan had already delivered the kind of spectacular moments that would eventually become his trademark, but Bird had already reshaped the flow of the entire contest through his decision-making. It was the difference between fighting against a powerful storm and quietly controlling the direction of the wind. The second half didn't rewrite the story, it simply made it impossible to ignore. Jordan increased the pressure, determined to force the game onto his terms, while Bird continued impacting every area beyond just putting the ball in the basket. He controlled pace, slowing things down when necessary, speeding them up when opportunities appeared, and keeping Boston firmly in command even when Chicago managed to build momentum. Every counter from the Bulls seemed to arrive moments after Bird had already anticipated it. What made Bird's performance even more frustrating for opponents was how effortless it appeared from the outside. There were no emotional outbursts, no obvious signs of strain, and no dramatic reactions after big plays. He simply continued making the right read, possession after possession, until the game gradually shifted in Boston's favor. It was a form of dominance that didn't rely on highlight reel moments, and somehow that made it even more difficult for opponents to solve.
Jordan, short jumper, and it drops at 50.
Which is, we pretend Jordan's career was 6 years long. Everyone ate on Michael's watch. Larry Bird, the best player when he walked into the league. You know how many times Michael beat Larry in the playoffs? Is 0.
I'm like, what? I'm like, what? He's like, and there's only 2 guys said that to me, him and Michael.
Yeah.
Michael said to me one game, he said, yo, man, y'all, I'm just offended out here. I said, what you offended by? Y'all got a white guy trying to guard me. Larry and Michael are the only 2 guys. And you gotta laugh.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, you gotta laugh.
It's a setup, too.
Yeah,
you like, how you ticker. What's that?
Jordan, however, was developing something entirely different beneath the surface. Even in matchups where Boston managed to dictate the final result, he was quietly absorbing every detail, like a student studying a masterclass. He was learning how elite defenses shifted on rotation, how experienced players disguised help at the last possible second, and how even the smallest hesitation could be punished at the highest level of the game. And without even realizing it, Bird became part of that lesson, not by simply outplaying him, but by pushing him into constant adjustment and growth. By the time these early clashes reached their final stages, a clear pattern started to emerge. The Celtics weren't just defeating the Bulls, they were revealing the gap between raw, explosive talent and a fully refined system of dominance. Jordan wasn't being broken down in the traditional sense, but he was being introduced to a brand of greatness that went far beyond pure athletic ability. And Bird, whether it was intentional or just his natural style, was proving that IQ, timing, and control could influence a game just as much as speed and power. Years later, when fans revisit these matchups, the conversation often gets reduced to simple stats, wins and losses, and championship legacies. But the reality on the court was far more complex and far more subtle. It was one of those rare moments where 2 eras of greatness quietly collided, each one testing the other, and neither player left the same as they arrived.
Who's the greatest, the GOATs of all time? Y'all never play against Larry Bird. Larry Bird would give you nightmares now if you have to sit back and think about it. Kevin McHale would smell like garlic on purpose. And rub his underarms. Petrovic, you remember that there was a player, Petrovic? Can't even punch him and it's not gonna do anything. You would have been great, because you, back in the day, you can fight and then when they break you up, they just tell you to calm down. Yeah. And then a coach come by and go, you know, you don't get paid to fight.
Is he the greatest small forward of all time? Like, is he
Yes.
2? Yes. Is LeBron the small forward in your opinion?
LeBron can play all 5 positions.
Okay, so you're not counting the small forward.
He's like Magic. So Magic, LeBron over here.
Okay.
Kobe and Michael over here.
Okay.
Larry Bird and everybody else over here. But no.
Before Michael Jordan ever became the undisputed face of basketball greatness, there was a stretch where Larry Bird managed to show him something far more important than any headline or highlight. It wasn't taught through interviews or speeches, but through real possessions, defensive rotations, and high-pressure decisions unfolding in real time. That lesson never tried to rank who was better. Instead, it revealed what true greatness looks like once it is fully developed, just waiting for the next generation to reach that level. Looking back now, what makes those early battles so compelling is how few people understood they were actually watching knowledge being passed through competition itself. Beneath all the scoring runs and matchups, there was a very specific type of pressure being applied to Jordan. It wasn't built on trash talk or physical dominance, but on an unshakable level of consistency that never slipped. At that stage in his career, Jordan's talent was never in doubt, but his ability to maintain it at the highest level still had to be proven. He could take over segments of a game in ways that looked almost unreal, but doing it against a team like Boston demanded more than pure scoring skill. It required seeing the floor like a seasoned veteran, and just as importantly, knowing when to hold back instead of forcing the action. And that is exactly the space where Larry Bird always seemed to exist.
half of the game against the Celtics Thursday. Jordan trying to fake Bird, can't do it.
Damn! Man, listen, I got articles from when Boston was trying to trade Larry Bird to the Bulls, and Jordan said he'd take a pay cut. I can't beat him. I'd take a pay cut for him to come over here. See, most people can't get the print. I'm having editors from the 80s send me all their print work.
How long did Jordan
Jordan said, so the Boston Celtics was thinking about trading Larry Bird, and Michael Jordan said he'll take a pay.
Bird never really had to chase control of the game, because more often than not, the game seemed to drift naturally in his direction. If the tempo got too fast, he would deliberately slow it down through possession control, spacing, and an almost surgical sense of timing. If defenders became too comfortable, he would disrupt their rhythm with off-ball movement that looked basic on the surface, but constantly created small pockets of uncertainty. And if teams focused too heavily on taking him away, he would instantly shift into a facilitator, turning Boston's entire system into a response mechanism that punished that exact decision. As these matchups continued, a subtle shift began to appear in Jordan's game as well. He started testing different approaches, not only in scoring, but in how he controlled pace. There were moments where he intentionally slowed the game down, almost as if trying to replicate the level of control Boston was imposing. What made Boston's defense so difficult during that era wasn't a single lockdown defender, but a fully connected system built on communication, precise rotations, and an advanced understanding of passing lanes before they even fully developed. That meant Jordan was never just attacking one man. He was going up against a structure that was already adjusting before he even made his first move. And within that structure, Bird operated as both a scorer and a coordinator, which made him even more difficult to contain. It was a style of basketball that appeared deceptively simple, and that simplicity was exactly what made it so effective at the highest level, because the real complexity was hidden inside discipline and repetition.
Then Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Kareem, Wilt, Bill Russell. You're not better than those guys. So we're in the room getting ready for the three-point contest at an All-Star game. Larry walks in and says, "Which one of y'all gonna come in second place?" Y'all heard me. Which one of y'all gonna come in second place? I was like, damn, that was like my first real talk to him. Ooh, that sounded pretty aggressive. He won, though. He won. I mean, he was one of the best at trash talking, man.
Meanwhile, Jordan continued producing the kinds of moments that would later become the foundation of highlight culture itself. Explosive drives, mid-air adjustments, and finishes that made entire crowds react before they even processed what had just happened. But what he was slowly realizing, almost without it fully registering, was that highlights don't automatically equal control, and control was exactly where Bird separated himself from everyone else. By the time the fourth quarter arrived in those early matchups, even casual viewers could start to notice a shift. Boston wasn't simply trying to outscore the opposition anymore. They were managing the emotional rhythm of the entire game. They understood when to slow things down, when to push tempo, when to force isolation, and when to trust ball movement to break a defense apart. And at the center of all of it, Bird wasn't just reacting to what was happening, he was actively shaping it. Jordan would still get his moments because true greatness doesn't vanish under pressure, but that's where the real separation started to show, not in raw talent, but in how each player controlled sequences. Bird had an almost unmatched understanding of sequencing in that era. He could see possessions 2 or 3 passes ahead, not as guesswork, but as pattern recognition sharpened by repetition and experience. Jordan, still evolving at that stage, was building that same layer in real time, but he hadn't fully reached it yet. And ironically, that's exactly what made those early matchups so significant.